innovators. I'm Todd Wyant, and welcome to the Bridging the Gap podcast presented by Applied Software. You're invited to join our MEP and construction innovation adventure with a mission to propel this great industry forward. My guest today is Chip Parsley, Director of Prefabrication Solutions at Pointers. Chip is involved in prefabrication projects from conception to completion and brings a broad depth of industry knowledge while seamlessly integrating new and innovative building techniques into standard industry best practices. Welcome to the show, Chip.
Thank you very much, Todd. Glad to be here.
Yeah. So let's start with how you got into the construction industry.
Oh, wow. Okay. So in 1995, I was 25, and I was basically going from job to job and just kind of messing around. I wanted to sell something always. I've always wanted to be a salesman of some sort. And so Dad was like, hey, have you ever thought of getting into the sheet metal trade? And I'm like, no. He's like, well, it'd be a good thing for you to do because it would be a trade. It would be some skill that you would have, you could bank on, you could rely on. And, so why don't you think about it? So I did. And I thought, you know what, let's go a different direction. I'd done sales for a long time. I was 24, 25. And so he's like, so I'm like, you know what, let's go ahead and do this. So I got into the trade when I was 25. Yeah. And I've been in the sheet metal workers trade. I was then from 95 to about 2008. And in the sheet metal workers trade, I have been an apprentice. I've been a journeyman. I've been a project manager. I've been a estimator. I've been business development. And I've been the president of a company, and that company was mine. And so I owned my own sheet metal shop for about 2.5 years. And in 2005, I came to Pointer, really because of the depth of, scope of what they did. They were a bigger company. My company was pretty small, and the partner I had and I were, we're okay, but things weren't going so great. And so I just decided to make a step to a larger sheet metal shop. So went to that and basically became estimator, project manager, and business development for Pointer, and spent until now really being in the industry there. And so then in 2018, Joseph came to me and said, hey, I want you to lead up a new thing we're going to do. We're going to add 50,000 square feet to the building, which had already had 100,000 square feet, or about 110. And he said, and I want to get into prefabrication. And I'm like, really? He's like, yeah. He goes, I think it's the next thing. I think it's the next thing that's going to happen. He goes, if you'd be interested in kind of hitting that up and driving that, he goes, I'd like to put you in charge of it. So that is kind of, where I went. So really when I got into the trade at 25 to up to about now, I'd always been dedicated to some kind of HVAC or sheet metal work. And in 2020, we stepped out and started a a prefabrication business. And I've been actually since September of 2020, I've been in a master's program at Stone Pile College for prefabrication and modular construction, which has been a huge help because as I've gone out and tried to teach everybody about modular construction and prefabrication, I also on the back end was learning much more about the overall scope of general construction. My background and my training had always been in some kind of sheet metal. And so I didn't have the knowledge really in foundations, concrete, drywall studs. I mean, all those general construction materials that I just had not put my hand on yet. And so over the last 1.5 years, I've done that. And I've got one more class left. I got to write a thesis. And my thesis is how I'm going to improve the construction industry. And so I've got that to do over the next 4 months, and then I'll be finished and with a master's degree in modular construction, which is going to be great. I mean, it's going to be something I'm really proud of, spending the time doing that. So that kind of brings us to me and where I'm at today.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a cool journey. I always love hearing people's backgrounds into it.
Yeah.
And I'm
a second generation sheet metal worker, and my son just started, so he's third generation. So
that's awesome.
We're keeping the tradition going.
So was your dad a sheet metal worker too? Is that why he suggested the career?
He was. Like I said, I was 25 when he said something to me about it, and I'm kind of like, you could have said something when I was 18.
Yeah.
20. I mean, we could have started this a lot earlier, but it's funny because I always said, oh, I'll never work with my hands. I'm not a manual labor type of person. I would be more on the sales side of it. But
Yeah.
those 5 years I spent learning the trade, those 5 years I spent understanding how to build things and being on the construction site, um, no better training, no better training. And so that's when my son, came to me and said he was thinking about either going to college or, getting in the trade. I said, encouraged him to do the trade if he didn't want to do college. I said, because it's a great place to learn. And then what I've done with it, I mean, I started as an apprentice and I've sat in every single seat possible. And now having the opportunity to sit in this seat with modular construction is, wow. I mean, I just couldn't ask for anything more. It's so exciting. And I really, appreciate Pointer and Joseph giving me this opportunity to lead this. And so it's been really cool. Even though it's been tough those last 2 years, because the market that we're trying to build is the market that's been most affected by the current pandemic. So it's been a struggle, but we've captured some projects, which we're going to talk about. And so, things are looking up, and it's been a really cool journey. And I had to learn a lot, but I've done it in a quick fashion, and I knew I could do it. And that's why, he put me in charge of this, because he knew I could adapt.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's one of the cool things about the construction industry, and your story is evidence of this, is the options that exist within the industry. You start coming in one segment of it, but you can adapt and shift and do so many different things throughout the course of a career in the construction industry that other industries, they don't get that flexibility as much.
Yeah, and I got the opportunity to move into the office, which I always wanted to do. And so those are things, if you want, you can go get them. And that's the thing that's not unattainable. You're not pigeonholed into any position. If you want it and you talk to the people and tell people you want it and prove that you can do it, you'll get the opportunity, because people, I know Pointer, we promote from within a lot, because sheet metal is a unique position, and coming out of college with a degree won't necessarily prepare you for what you've got to do in the sheet metal industry. So it's better to bring those people in from the field, even though you're robbing yourself of a foreman who may be a really good one. You're gaining a really good project manager. So, you try to replace those foremen as quickly as you can. So with the people, coming up through the trade. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's dive into modular. Kind of, how would you define modular construction? And then what's the biggest kind of misconception that people have in the industry about modular?
That's two questions. I mean, you don't want to talk for the next 20 minutes. Do you?
Just trying to set you up.
You're just going to sit there and nod for the next 20 minutes.
That's right. Make my job easy on me.
There you go. So modular construction to me is, there's really three phases to it. There's single trade prefabrication, which Pointer does on a daily basis all the time. We're making, basically a puzzle. If you've ever seen a drawing of an HVAC drawing, it's a bunch of fittings, elbows, transitions, straight pieces, whatever it is, and it all gets sent out in, 1,000 pieces or 500 pieces, however many it takes. And so what we try to do in single trade prefabrication is we try to put an elbow on the end of a straight piece of duct, right? Or we try to put 4 joints together and make it 20 feet rather than hanging 5 foot at a time. And so we're always looking for opportunities to build in larger chunks. So instead of shipping out 1,000 pieces, you're going to ship out maybe 750. Well, that's all labor in the field, and labor in the field is the most expensive. It's the most subject to hostile environments. It's on a ladder, right? It's 20 feet in the air, 30 feet in the air. Hell, we've dunked 80 feet in the air. And so it's always subject to a lot of variables. Whereas in a shop, you're 5 foot off the ground. You're more controlled. You have controlled electronics. You have controlled environment, and you can perform better. So single trade prefabrication is what Pointer does. And really, mechanicals do it. HVAC companies do it. Electrical companies do it. They all do that single trade where they'll build their components in their own shop for their own benefit in a controlled environment as much as possible. So that's single trade prefabrication. Then you have multi-trade prefabrication. Multi-trade prefabrication is when you're going to build a rack, and the best place for this application is a hospital. You're going to have multiple services that are going down a corridor that has to be a fire rated corridor, and you're going to have multiple trades going. You have the plumber, you're going to have the communications, you're going to have electrical, you're going to have HVAC, you're going to have all fire protection, all that going through this one corridor. And instead of sticking 6 or 7 different trades and people in that corridor at one time trying to cram all that stuff, after the drywall contractor seals up that fire rated enclosure, you're going to do that all in the shop. And you're going to build it in 20-foot sections. And you're going to have all the different trades and subcontractors come in and put their equipment or their materials on a rack. Then you're going to ship it out in 20-foot sections, and you're going to put it up. And you can either go up in the corridor where the corridor is already finished, or you could make it the corridor. So you're going to have drywall up both sides, and you're going to make that the corridor, and you're going to stick it right up against the ceiling, and it's going to be your fire rated corridor. And then all the drywall contractor has to do is go from the bottom cord of that piece to the floor, and now you have a finished MEP, and you have the finished fire rated corridor, and then you get the walls to finish, and now you're all finished. And you're doing that in 20-foot sections. Before the project's really complete, it still has to be pretty open so you can move those sections through. But you're putting up lots of finished product in a quick amount of time. You could finish 2 or 3 floors in a week, depending on how you schedule it out. So that's multi-trade prefabrication. Again, doing things offsite. That's what modular construction is removing that chunk from the job site and moving it into a controlled factory or environment. The last piece is volumetric modular construction. That's when you're building full components like a restroom. You're going to build 300 restrooms inside a hotel. You're going to build 300 restrooms or lab spaces in a hospital. You're going to build complete bedrooms, and you're going to stack them, right? You're going to stack them up and make a 24-story tower, which they've already done in New York.
Right.
They have a 24-story or 25-story tower that they did in there. They did it in New Jersey, right next to the Barclays Center, and those were individual steel modules that they put in. And they do it over in Asia and Europe all the time. And in Asia, they make them out of concrete. And so those are fully furnished, fully finished pieces that you stack to build your building. Mm-hmm. So that would be volumetric. And it's, again, anything from a full building to just pieces and parts that go into structures. Yeah. So that's modular construction. That's how I see it. And that's, I think, how most of the industry, and that's kind of how it's parsed up amongst people. And single trade, multi-trade, I think has been done more. Volumetric is the piece that I think North America is trying to put their head around and build the industry. Because what we have currently is a lack of manufacturers.
Right, sure.
So if you had all the contractors and engineers, designers, owners, and everybody going, hey, we're all in on volumetric modular manufacturing. We want to do this a lot. And they start putting up, they would find quickly that there is not enough bandwidth within the industry to support all the work that could be done this way. And so that's the other piece. We got to build that infrastructure.
Yeah. Well, it's also a different mindset in trying to shift people's perception of how you go about doing a job.
Yeah, it's been 2 years trying to shift the mindset, and I'm gaining some traction. I really am. But Indiana is in the Midwest is kind of always that last piece. So you got the East Coast and the West Coast, and they're ahead of it, and it kind of migrates itself to the intercoastal in the Midwest. And so when I went out 2 years ago, started knocking on doors and talking about it, everybody heard about it, everybody knew about it, but nobody had ever designed it. Nobody had ever really done it. Yeah. And so I'm trying to build an industry and getting people on board with things that we, at that point, when I first started in January and February of in 2020, we had never done it. Yeah, it was a big hurdle, because it was like, hey, we can do it. We've got the space for it. We know how to do it. But you got to find somebody to be your first customer and give you a chance.
Right. So what misconceptions have you been running into through that?
Yeah, so the standard misconceptions about modular or volumetric, and really because that's what we're going to talk about. The single trade and the multi-trade, I mean, those are components, but everybody's doing that. I mean, that's
Mhm.
not really that's nothing new. That's fine, and that's all done with normal stuff. When you get to volumetric, now you have to bump up against that. People consider it cheap because people
Mhm.
think modular mobile home.
Mhm.
I mean, you could put your fist through a mobile home. I mean, they're 4 inches thick. I mean, it's really light construction. And it's
Yeah.
light because it's mobile, right? I mean, they want to move it, but it's big, and so they can't make it real heavy. So we're fighting the idea that it's cheap, it's inferior materials, it's not permanent, and that it can't be high design. That there's no architectural value to it. It's just a bunch of boxes, right? Well, that's none of that is true. Um, if and I wrote this down specifically before I had to. When you get done with this, go to look up the Rockefeller University campus expansion. It was
Okay.
done in 2018, and they built 19. I don't know how heavy they were. They were really heavy modules that they shipped down the East River, and then they lifted them in place for a full expansion, 300 feet long along the East Coast to expand the campus. And it's a full research facility, 3 stories tall. There's nothing cheap about this. It
Yeah.
is all structural steel and it's amazing what they did. And you go look it up because it really is amazing. But what they did is they cut like $50 million out of the job. They're working in New York City over top of the FDR, and they would have had to shut down the highway in this main thoroughfare for months, and that just wasn't going to happen.
Right.
So this was a huge benefit in time and money that was saved, and Turner did it. Turner Construction did it with the university with the help of the architect and engineer. So the misconception is this is somehow cheap construction. This is not.
Mhm.
This is commercial grade, heavy duty manufacturing construction. Um, there are multiple manufacturers out there using steel. Even the wood products that they're building, they're not cheap either, and they're not poor quality. In the West Coast, when you've got lack of labor, and then you got tight labor, you have expensive labor, then you got property that's really expensive, and you're trying to build in San Francisco or the Monterey Valley or someplace there where you have very limited space to create a construction area. Bringing these modules in, they're bringing these modules in that are 16 feet wide and 70 and 80 feet long that create 2 hotel rooms at once. And so you're just stacking them 2 at a time, and it even has the corridor built in between. So you got 2 modules on either side with the corridor in the middle, and they just stack those down, and they can build a whole building in just in a week or 2. And they're bringing them down from Idaho. So they'll ship stuff down from Idaho down into San Francisco and in California because it's less expensive to build it and ship it than it is to build it in place.
Yeah, I believe that. So how do you then kind of combat those misconceptions by sharing or better sharing the practical success stories that exist in modular?
So what I do is, since I don't really have a lot of my own that I can share, I'm a big advocate of making sure when I find something that's very interesting in the modular world,
Mhm.
I share it and I push it out there on the LinkedIn or however I connect to people. And
Mhm.
or when I even have a conversation when I bring a client in and they want to talk about modular construction, I'll bring in and I'll pull up the video of like the Rockefeller University and say, hey, look, this is what we can do.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm telling you that I have not done that and I didn't do that. But I'm telling you, this is the level of modular construction that we can do. We can truly build complete buildings and ship them across the country. From the one building that was built in New York that's 24 stories tall. I think it's called the an AC motel, I think is what it's called, a hotel. I can't remember exactly, but anyhow, they built all those modules over in Poland, shipped them across the country, across the Atlantic Ocean,
Wow.
and put them in New York. And so I mean, are you kidding me?
That's crazy.
If it's less expensive to build it taller and ship it across the ocean and then stack them in New York, I mean, there's some advantages here, and it's not
Yeah,
cheap. And if you're going to build a 25-story building out of modules, or let's call them Legos, right? They can't be cheap and inexpensive and flimsy pieces. That's a
right. Has to be
24-story.
sturdy.
Yeah, that's a 25-story building in New York. And I mean, the building codes in New York, that's pretty stringent. So
Yeah.
I guess that's the way you share success stories of projects that have already been completed here and people that have done it. And you say, hey, look, they can do it. And I can bring the knowledge, and I can bring the industry, and I can bring the expertise to build those type of buildings for you. And if you got a 14-month project, I can do it for you in 8 months. How's that sound? They're
Right.
like, whoa, wait a minute, really?
Compelling.
Yeah, when I can put the keys in the hand of a person who has a hotel or a hospital, or somebody who has a lab, and needs to start doing their process in it, or anything quickly. Those are interesting conversations, and that'll get someone's attention. It is 2 to 3% more expensive. And I only say that currently it's like that because you don't have a company that is vertically integrated to really bring all the necessary disciplines in to create the true modular manufacturer. What you have, and what I currently do is I bring subcontractors in, and I'll subcontract out the engineering at this point right now, because I haven't built the infrastructure yet internally to do things stem to stern. A company that just recently went out of business was Katerra.
Right.
And they tried to vertically integrate the construction industry, and big old, Mother Construction slapped them down and said, no, you will not. You understand, we've been doing it this way for thousands and thousands of years. What do you think you're going to do? Come in here with a new idea and just make it happen? That ain't going to work.
Yeah, I would push back some though in the 2 or 3% more expensive, because if you're taking the project from 14 months to 18 months or 8 months, and you're getting them in there earlier, they're able to start making money off of that building a whole lot earlier. And so they're picking up that 2 to 3% pretty quickly, even if the construction cost, the physical cost is 2 to 3% on the front side. So they make it up pretty quick.
Right now, Todd, it is it's just a tad bit more. And the thing is, the fact it's just a tad more expensive tells you that it's not really that more expensive. It's really just the fact that we don't really have any true, really good manufacturers that can really take that 2 and 3% and then get rid of it. Because like you said, you're exactly right. 2 or 3% is worth it to get your project done 5 or 6 months faster. Yeah. Every owner will tell you that. And that's the owner's requests. I want it higher quality, I want it faster, and I want it better. And so they're asking the construction world to do that. And the construction world is a Model T, right? It's an old machine. It's an old machine that, I mean, we're still building buildings like we built them, back when the Romans were around. I mean, think about it. We're still shipping a bunch of material to a site and building a one-off project every single time.
Right.
For some of these large unicorn. Yeah, everything's a unicorn. I mean, the residential industry has really figured it out, because they have panelized systems and they'll give you 4 or 5 different models. And so they start streamlining and manufacturing. And so, but the commercial industry, we don't, which we should. Hospital, we're building a hospital in downtown Indianapolis that's going to have like 500 or 600 restrooms. And they are seriously, they're dedicated to prefabricating those, because that's going to remove maybe 500 or 600 people from the job site. The job site, it's a 2 million square foot hospital. It's going to have 2,500 people working on that site at any given day. Wow. And so the logistics of just getting that many people in downtown Indianapolis, where are you going to park them? Where are you going to feed them? I mean, daily basis, that's crazy. So they want to find a way to move as much of that work offsite so that they can, decongest their area. And then you talk about universities. I mean, they would love to do more of this offsite, so they don't have construction workers come to their sites. You don't have a lot of travelers that are coming in that are not familiar with the area, or who, could possibly do nefarious things on the campus. So you're eliminating, strange travelers coming into your university. That might be a benefit to you. And I mean, so all these hidden benefits, right? They're not out there. It's not, well, you save real dollars. Well, how about we just eliminate 200 people coming to your campus every day? How's that sound? Well, that sounds like a great idea. Less traffic, less congestion, less strangers, less all those things. So
yeah, a lot of extra added benefits there.
Yeah. So and I try to highlight those. I absolutely do. I try to highlight those. But as far as myths, I mean, like I said, we and I think we're getting past that it's a cheap build or anything of that nature. I mean, I'm presenting it in such a fashion that I'm not talking about using different components. But here's the other thing too, because I know you have a question about innovation later, and I'm just going to jump to it right now. We need to figure out how to use different type of components and not build a modular structure the same way you build it if it was on site. Right?
Yeah.
I mean,
so unpack that a bit more for me.
So here you go. So it's as simple as a wall construction. A wall construction has 7-8 layers. So you got a stud, then you've got insulation inside that stud, and then you're going to have some kind of OSB and plywood, and then a wall covering, and then you're going to have insulation, then you're going to have, you might have 7 or 8 layers to meld up that wall to make it a good insulated, sturdy wall. Well, I'm going to build something and I'm going to use an insulated metal panel. It's 6 inches thick and it's an R48. Boom. And I'm going to put one thing up, and that creates my entire exterior. Instead of having to go around the building 8 times and putting up different layers of stuff, I'm going to do it once. That's faster. And it's still getting the same R value. It's still going to make the building airtight. And so we got to figure out how to use different components to quicken the pace of a project, but then also innovate to say, how can we make structures differently? Let's really start thinking about pushing the product side of it. And okay, so the wall that you build in 7 different layers ends up being, I don't know, maybe it costs $12 or $15 or $16 a square foot, and the one wall costs $25 or $30 a square foot. You say, well, the wall is twice as expensive. Yeah, but you only had to put it up once. Whereas the other wall, you had 8 layers. How much labor is that going around 8 times to put that stuff on? So now it's labor saving, right? Plus it's easy. Easier. And it makes the construction process easier. Not saying I want dumb people working in the industry, but it makes it easier and faster for somebody to install. If it's not as complex and it's simpler for them to install, it makes them faster, it makes them more efficient, right?
Right. Well, you're streamlining the processes, and you're taking some of the complexity, the needless complexity out of it, so that you can focus more on the areas that you needed more complexity to kind of map it through. And just, I think it allows you to shift and focus where is needed, instead of wasting time on stuff that could be just a whole lot more efficient.
Yeah. So it's not just saying, okay, Chip, we're going to just, build a building in the shop and take everything off there, but we're going to build the same way in the shop as we would on thing. It's let's move it into the shop, and then let's think about ways to build it that are already faster and more efficient. We're already making it better by bringing it into the shop where it's a controlled environment. Then let's use products that will make it even faster when we move it into a controlled environment. So let's look at different type of products that we're going to use. And there are innovative products out there right now that people are using. Like for instance, there's a company called Acorn Vac, and they've created and they've built a system that allows you to eliminate all of the plumbing that you would need underfloor. So it no longer works on gravity, it works on suction. And this when you go on an airplane and you hit that button and that suction that goes down,
Yep.
Same concept. So on every single floor, they put a pump system with tanks. And you hit that button and it sucks it down, pulls it, and guess what? It doesn't go into the floor. It goes up and it goes overhead and then drops it someplace else. So you've eliminated all your floor penetrations. All you need is one, maybe two in a hospital, and you can service all your restrooms. Plus, it won't leak. If there's a pinhole or a hole in the pipe, it's under negative pressure. The water can't get out. So even if you have a leak, it's still going to pull. You're going to lose pressure. But that'd be the only thing you do. You actually wouldn't have a leak. Then if you actually have a problem in a normal plumbing situation, you've got to go downstairs and disrupt whoever's downstairs to fix the plumbing, right?
Right.
Not anymore. It's all on the same floor. So these kind of innovative ideas and thoughts and materials and equipment need to be brought into the construction industry because we're already using it. We're using it on an airplane. Well, this company just said, hey, we could probably use this in a building. And you absolutely can.
Yeah.
Absolutely can. And the nice thing about this acorn back thing is that it makes things truly modular. If I didn't have to worry about any underground plumbing, I could set a module down. And then if I didn't like it there, I could pick it up and leave it. And I don't have any underground plumbing to worry about other than one plumbing connection to the main sanitary to leave the building.
Yeah.
Now it's truly modular and I don't have anything, and I could make it a flat bottom. It goes onto a truck and goes to its next location. And that's the other thing. If people don't like where their building's at or it doesn't work, they can go to another place. Starbucks is doing this. Starbucks plops down a modular building and lets it sit there for about 6 months, sees how the market is, deciding whether they're going to build a permanent structure or not.
Interesting.
Yeah,
it's a great way to do it. Yeah.
And Chick-fil-A is doing the same thing. They're having their stores built modularly because they need to get to market faster.
Yeah.
They need to.
They're everywhere.
Yeah, they're everywhere, and they want to be more everywhere, right?
Yeah.
Chick-fil-A store will do $4 million a month in revenue. The next closest one is McDonald's, and they're doing a little over 2.
I believe it.
So
Chick-fil-A gets a lot of my money.
they get mine too. My kids love Chick-fil-A. They've had to revamp all the drive-throughs because they've had to make them all double lanes.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's
so
always back there.
How fast can they get to market, right? This is a classic example of, man, we could put a store up fast. We can get into that market and we can start clicking off that $4 million a month in no time at all. Instead of taking 12 months to get to revenue, it takes us 6. Owners love this.
Yeah, absolutely. So in your mind, what's the end point of modular? And maybe it's tying back into what you brought up with what you're working on for your master's on how are you going to improve the construction industry?
So, construction is, in my opinion, it's an old machine that they've just added pieces onto it, right? They're improving it incrementally as we move along, with the innovation of CAD, and now we're drawing everything in 3D, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can actually build your whole building inside the computer, and you can get as detailed as you want. I mean, we found that you can get down, to the very, very detail. And when you're building modular, you have to have those details. That's one thing about that to be true. But innovating, I think you need to innovate the process of making it less expensive. Construction, fortunately, has gotten more expensive and less efficient. And that makes no sense. I mean, you would think that we would have gotten more efficient, but we haven't, because we haven't innovated in how we do things. And so my idea to innovate would be 2 things. One, I think you have to seriously look at, and it's a government thing, and it has to go through laws and things like that to be changed, but changing the bid process instead of ever doing a low bid type application. It's a horrible idea. So why would you ever buy construction on simply, well, who can give me the dirt lowest price? Because that's who I want to use. It doesn't make any sense. It's a bad way of doing things. And so, that's an industry, and that's a big high level 30,000 feet, type thing that needs to be, in my opinion, needs to be fixed. But when we get down into the more nitty gritty of things, I would definitely try to innovate the products you use to, like I said before, innovate those products that you use to build the building. It's taking those products that maybe are already in the industry and just maybe using them a little different. It's trying to turn construction into more manufacturing and gain those efficiencies that manufacturing's already seen in the construction industry.
Right. Well, I think learning from other industries like manufacturing on how they handled their transformation and what do they do to streamline things, I think that's a super valuable thing for the construction industry to do a little soul searching on and bring those efficiency gains from other industries into construction.
I believe this is the next step in construction. And I also believe it's the next step in construction because it creates a nicer environment, a nicer job, right?
Mm-hmm.
My son comes into the construction industry and he's working in the shop. And I'm like, well, do you want to go out and work in the field? He's like, no, it sounds like it's too chaotic. He says it's too random. You have to drive different places every day. You're in the cold, you're in the weather. He goes, I'm in the shop. I drive to the same spot. I do a couple different things in the shop. I can, rotate through. He goes, I know where I'm going to be. I got a place to sit and eat lunch. If I got to go to the restroom, I got a restroom right there. I mean, there's so many benefits. So why not bring the construction industry as a whole more into that mold where you get a lot more people that say, I'll go work construction if it's more manufacturing.
Yeah. I agree. Well, how do people connect with you and find out more information on what you're doing?
So I'm at Chip Parsley at pointerinc.com. The website is www.pointersheetmetal.com. And in the beginning, Pointer was an HVAC company. And so what we've got our start in is we went from HVAC ductwork to industrial ductwork then we started stepping out and doing platforms and started doing specialty work, handrails. And so it's almost been an evolution of we've been manufacturers all our lives, for the last 20 years. And so the next step we believe is to manufacture more whole products, more components. So that's why we kind of stepped out and decided to look into the bathroom modules, the labs modules, anything of that nature, because we're manufacturers at heart. That's what we do. We do have a contracting side, obviously, in the sheet metal industry, and we have 500 people that work for us, and I think it's probably about 100 in the shop. So we're looking to grow the shop. We're looking to grow the manufacturing side, and we believe the next place to do that is in some kind of modular manufacturing. And so that's where you can find me. I'm on LinkedIn, Chip Parsley, Director of Pointer Prefabrication Solutions, and so I love to connect with anybody who loves to talk. As you can see, I like to talk and I can talk.
That's great. Well, final question for you. What does innovation mean to you?
So innovation is, it's not necessarily finding brand new things. It's taking those things that you already have and figuring out new and different ways to use those things. And then the innovation comes in the application. So it's taking products you already have and saying, hey, we can apply this here. And then, hey, if we add this component to it, hey, look what we did. We created something all brand new. So it's not necessarily, you don't have to start from scratch. Innovation is taking what you already have and adding to it, making it a little better. That's how we've always done. I mean, let's face it, with cars, it's been an evolution. Hey, what if we put suspension on that was softer? Hey, what if we power steering instead of this manual steering, right? It's, hey, how about if we do an automatic transmission rather than a manual transmission? It's still a transmission, but let's automate it. So it's, and it's also within the industry, figuring out how to, within the shop, automate more, right? How do we automate? How can we get this process to where, we don't need 10 people doing this, we only need 2, and we have a machine doing the heavy lifting, because that's the one thing with construction and manufacturing, both of those products, there's a lot of repetitive things done, and a human body, if done, like that all the time, wears out. So it's better for a machine to do it, because a person, you'll have to change them out. They're just going to wear out. And plus they'll get bored. It'll become monotonous, and then they'll get uninspired and unengaged. Machine doesn't do that. So it's also looking for those opportunities to innovate within the manufacturing, within the shop.
Right. Well, the human is great at the creative problem solving aspect of it and thinking kind of outside the box. That obviously the computer just thinks of the parameters that you assign it.
You cannot disconnect the human element from the world of construction, because those are the innovators, and the innovators are the people that are sitting on the job or on the manufacturing floor, watching the process over and over again, going, man, if we make that change. And so it's important to, go talk to the people that are doing the work. Say, man, what would they make that easier? What would make it easier for you to do? Right?
Yeah, that's right. Well, Chip, thanks so much for coming on the show and talking. I know we're just kind of skimming the surface here. There's so much more great areas that we could dive down. We'll have to have you come back one day.
Well, hey, Todd, thanks so much for inviting me. I really appreciate it. Love to talk about modular manufacturing. And so anything you guys want to talk about some more, just reach out. We'd love to engage.